Good morning. Let's start this session. My name is Piotr Marczuk. I'm from Microsoft in Poland, and I will have a pleasure to host today quite distinguished guests and speakers. I see the last speaker is just approaching us. Good morning, Mr. Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking today in the morning about governments going digital. We'll be talking about different ways of realizing the digital strategy in 4 countries. We have distinguished guests from Lithuania, from Latvia, from Estonia, and from Poland. We have people who are, our guests are in charge of the digitization of their respective governments. They are also in charge of digitization of their respective societies. They are in charge of supporting citizens in understanding modern ICT technologies, understanding them and using them every day. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce and invite to the stage Mrs. Daiva Kirkilaite-Cetkuti, Head of Information Society Unit from the Lithuanian government. Good morning. Mr. Arnis Daugulis, CIO of Latvian government. Deputy Minister Mr. Jurand Drop, Undersecretary of State from the Ministry of Administration and Digitization in Poland. And Mr. Taavi Kotka, CIO from Estonian government. Dear guests, as I mentioned, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Poland over the last decade are going through fast changes, not only economically, not only politically. Some of us adopting euro, all of us already joined EU, but also digitally. Let us discuss during this panel how do you see, as leaders of digital change with your government, the challenges, successes, maybe also failures. This session is not meant to be only like purely marketing session about all best projects that happened in your country. I would rather like this session to be a reflection about how this digitization process goes along the last, let's say, 10 years. What are the key learnings? What are the key challenges that you faced along the way? And let's try to share and discuss and exchange views and opinions. Let me start with Mrs. Daiva Kirkilaite-Cetkuti, and let's start with maybe the challenges. What do you understand as the key challenge in making bet on digitization by your government? Is it money? Is it skilled human resources, or maybe security concerns? Or maybe also lack of citizens' demand. We know that governments would like to introduce state-of-art and best citizen services. Sometimes at the end of the day, the reality is that not all of our citizens would like to use those services. How do you see those challenges when thinking about digitization of the government services?
Good morning, everyone. Is it working? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for this question. And I think it's a topic that it's very, important for us as the government officials to discuss, to understand. And I think the challenge is for governments first to have a very very good and a very clear strategy. Where do you want to go with digitalization? And sometimes it's not evident to design this strategy. So it's important to have the strategy. It's important to have the goals, the performance indicators that you want to achieve, but it's not enough. So we have a lot of policy challenges around. So I would say that technology part is the easiest part, but the policy challenge, setup of the procedures and standards dealing with digital initiatives in government, they are most difficult. And for example, this region, we have this legacy that there is a large number of ministerial decrees around IT governance. And this illustrates overall rather legalistic approach to digital government, and which has advantage on one side because the biggest being a strong mandate and continuity for strategic vision and directions. But on another side, it can be problematic when laws, decisions are overused. And sometimes they create the long and rigid process in order to change something. And it could be the lock-in decision, and we waste of time in this time of changing technologies. Sometimes these decisions we have to make fast and to move forward. So another challenge that I would mention, that would be funding, as the moderator mentioned. It's also how to find the necessary resources and how much government should invest and how much leave to the private sector to invest. Thanks to the EU structural funds, we manage to have a part of budget to invest in Lithuania, and we succeeded in investing in infrastructure. We have one of the best infrastructure in the region with the very good optical fiber coverage, and this also helps to us to move forward with other initiatives. However, the funding will be over, and we need to think, how do we organize? What will be the next business model? And so this will be a challenge for us, and we have to prepare for this. The another thing is cultural setup. So it's probably one of the most difficult, because to change the people's mind to go digital, it's not easy. So it's not easy for the people who doesn't have these skills, and they were mentioned by the moderator as well. The skills are quite important. And in the different levels, the skills are important. Important in the ones who produce the service, important who also use and receive the service. And so this kind of challenge is, I think, one of the important ones. So maybe before I would give also the floor for other speakers, before coming to the best examples.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me ask the question to Mr. Arnis Daugulis. As part of this strategy that Mrs. Deva mentioned, there is always a discussion within the government, I think, how to strike the right balance between doing or digitizing with our own forces and skills and teams and people, or to what extent we can rely on external vendors and on partnership with business and generally cooperation with those entities from outside government that can deliver the relevant services, and to what extent we can rely on our external partners. How do you strike the right balance between going digital using internal resources versus external vendors? What is the approach of your government in this regard?
Good morning, everybody. Well, in Latvia, in Latvian government, we do not have such thing as internal software house. All software development is outsourced, and these are external vendors who come in and build what the government has ordered. The thing which cannot be outsourced is the mastermind, the idea what the government wants to build. It has to stay at the government's. It has to stay at the government. If the situation comes out that in the end it is the vendor who is telling government what to do, then it's too much already, and that it is indication that something is wrong. But as regards how to implement what the government wants, then of course it's the right way is to work with vendors as with partners together in one team, discussing the best ways how to implement. And another component in this collaborative model is the users. The users or citizens who will be the ones who benefit from the solutions and services built by government. One more thing to add, as Daiva, my colleague, already mentioned, the technology is not always the most difficult part, and the IT project also never ends with the signing off the act to the vendor. And government itself needs to do a lot of activities in order to actually implement the service, to make it used, and also each system or service when it's built. Its life only starts at this moment, because this is the moment when it goes live, and there's a lot of interactions and a lot of changes which still need to be maintained. This is a living organism, and if you want to succeed in providing such governmental services, then be prepared to put enough resources, also human capital, into maintaining and permanently developing all this stuff.
Thank you very much. The next question, in a slightly tweaked format, I would like to ask to both gentlemen, Mr. Tavi and Mr. Jurand, why? Because I find the two countries, Poland and Estonia, sort of the different in terms of the size, population. So I would like to check whether the sort of the challenges related to the scale of digitization is similar or not. Generally, the question to Minister Jurand is the following: is digital by default a feasible principle, and how far we can go with this, with digitization? Does the size of the country matters when considering such principle? Simply speaking, would you consider mandatory rule of only digital services, with the exception related to maybe those people who are too old to use them, or not? So how far you can go with digitizing the government and services?
Well, good morning, everybody. Yes, definitely size matters, but if we start from this question, then there are always possibility for a devolution of power. So you can make regional levels of the administration stronger and more responsible also for digital things. So, but then there's a big question about public governance and how to manage a country. And as I see the faces here, so our audience is, well, I would say, predominantly young generation, and perhaps neither from administration or with long administration record, not yet from the private sector. So such things like the differences in management between private sector and public sector might be not so familiar to you, but for us it's the daily bread. Yeah? How to make our administration efficient enough so that the digital solutions are being rolled out. And in this sense, as we are talking about size, one of the biggest changes after the collapse of communism in Poland in 1989, there was a regional devolution reform, which means that the regional level has a lot of responsibilities, has money, can set their own agendas, like strategies. We have in Poland 16 voivodeships, and each of them has a regional information society strategy. So they think in such a way. Then you have very strong cities. And actually, my assessment of our record in rolling out digital solutions is that the big cities, so big I mean 300,000 till, well, Warsaw is 2 million, but we have maybe a dozen of them or 20 something. They are the most efficient in rolling out their own digital solutions. And it's not the central government, these are not the local gminas or whatever it's called, local counties, but these are large cities which on one hand they have enough resources, money, access to people, access to technology, structures, administrative structures, but on the other hand there is a very close ownership of the of any project, including digital projects. And I think that Tavi will talk a bit about ownership and how strong ownership is in Estonia. Estonia is always a country we look closely at, and we try, well, let us make it like in Estonia. But this very close ownership and putting the digital things in the fabric of functioning of our public administration as the key. So I would second here my colleagues that it's not the technology. Technology you can always procure from the market, and actually it's the most efficient way. Well, a government cannot produce software or complex systems. It can procure it, but there's still a need to have an in-house expertise, in-house skills. So the very fact that we don't produce software, we don't produce the system, doesn't mean that we don't need the skilled people in the government. And actually, this is something where there's always a tug of war, at least in my administration. How much in-house knowledge should we have? Then money, well, again, it was mentioned here, money, it was not a problem because we got some money from Brussels. Of course, supplemented by our additional funds. In future, it's likely to change. But if we build the systems now, then they will evolve. So it's not, you know, it's not a project which closes. Yes, it will evolve in future, but still this initial financial outlays would have been done from the European funds. So money is also not a problem. From my perspective, the biggest problem is the efficiency of public administration, providing good incentives, also to policymakers, providing good behavior in kind of, in the sense of setting first the strategy, then a plan, then drafting concrete projects, then committing money, and so on. At the end, control and evolution. So perhaps we'll talk about later about this, but the efficiency of administration is the most important challenge for us.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Tavis, similar question about how far you can go with digitization, and is digital by default a feasible option? I was running through all different kinds of reports and rankings over the last days, and that's why I also kept the Estonian response as the last one in this first round, because the truth is, in WEF reports, in Global Information Technology reports, in VASEDA reports, in the top, let's say, 10 or top 15 out of our 4 countries represented here, Estonia is usually listed. The rest has sort of a bit more challenging life and still has to catch up with this first group of most digitized countries in the world. So from your perspective, where is the sort of limit of digitization? How far you can go? Or if I would reverse the question, I would ask, what do you think will be the last service that should be, that is not still digitized, but should be digitized in the future?
Okay, I think we should boost this session somehow. I mean, like, we have lost half of the audience already. First of all, I mean, I think we shouldn't look at the reports so much. I mean, like, I don't know, United Nations report says that the most digital country in Europe is France. How funny is that? So, I mean, like, or Waseda, I mean, like, whoever has been in Japan has looked their information society, like, they're basically in Stone Age. So, and they are ranking like top 6 in the world. So, I mean, like, Norwegians have very great saying about this. If you can't win in others' Olympics, create your own one. So that's the report thing. I mean, like, you just have to create your own report where you succeed. I mean, like, so forget the reports. I mean, like, the key issue is, are you able to provide good services to the people or not? That's the key issue, and that's the main challenge. I also would like to answer this size thing. I mean, like, does size matter or not? I mean, like, in digital things, I mean, like, I can't answer the other part, but Estonia is like 35 times smaller than Poland, 35 times. So let's think about it. So in e-banking system in Poland, there's everything. You can check your account balance, you can pay, you can buy shares, you can apply for a loan, you can do everything. But in Estonia, as it is 35 times smaller country, we only can check our account balance. Smaller country, less functions. Sounds funny, right? Of course, we can do the same things in Estonia what the Polish guys can do in Poland. Yes, we can also do the payments. Yes, we can apply for the loan. Yes, we can buy shares, etc. The only difference comes in the cost per transaction. The cost per transaction is way higher in smaller countries compared with larger countries. So large countries should benefit way more from digitalization than smaller countries, because it's like costly to do this kind of stuff. And that leads me to the answering your question, like, should it be digital by default? No. I mean, like, that's not the issue. The issue is that how you solve the problem in most efficient way. In Estonia, like, we had the hype last decade, we should digitalize everything. I mean, like, we have e-service for everything. Even Olympic winners can apply for a pension using government e-service. Okay. let's try to calm down now. Like, how many Olympic winners Estonia has? Why should they have like their own? Or like another one. Every time you listen Estonian like saying something good about Estonia, it's like, all right, we can do a company with 18 minutes in Estonia. 18 minutes. Who needs that? I mean, like figuring out the company name takes a week. It doesn't matter if it's 18 minutes, 1 hour, or 2 days. I mean, like, it doesn't matter at all. So everything comes actually down to the key question, and that's motivation. And that's I think all countries are struggling in the world, that the government lacks motivation. Why? Because they have a monopoly. If you create bad e-banking system, you will lose customers because they will go to another bank which one has the better e-banking system. The government, if you don't like our, for example, our e-agriculture services, you don't have any other choice. If you don't like it, go to Finland. Or not. So it's monopoly, so there is no competition, there is no push, and if there is no push, there is laziness, there is low motivation, and all the other like problems that provide bad services to the citizen. So basically, the only key issue is the motivation and the willingness to serve like citizens in a proper way. That's the key issue. If you can solve that, great things happen. If you can't solve that, it's a monopoly. You don't like it, fly away.
Thanks a lot. Great comment. Short ad vocem, okay.
Yeah, if I can add just one issue to this discussion, whether size matters. Well, there is always a trade-off. Some things are more difficult in larger countries, some are easier. Yes, the upscaling is possible in a big country. And by definition, the IT should allow, well, the bigger is cheaper because the average cost is lower. But then we have at least 3 issues I can mention on the spot. First is the complexity of the systems. Our healthcare system is so complex that creation a new IT system platform for all the services is proving almost impossible to roll out. And it's it's perhaps less technology, but it's much more the legal framework of the healthcare system. And then the bigger country, the more complex it is, and the difficulties rise exponentially. Second, the decision-making system. Again, what I see from my practice is to get any decision is so difficult with ministries, with the regions, with all the institutions, plus vested interests in the country. So, well, again, we may read in the press about our healthcare system, who is in favor of having not such transparent solutions like our IT systems. And third, the incentives and the ownership. And if you have a direct connection between your actions and the results, and then the very issue of whether you are, well, for the politicians is whether you would be re-elected or not. If there is a direct link between, then it's easy. And it's what I told you about big cities. In big cities, yes, if they work, people see that a city works, and then the mayors can be re-elected for the third or for the fourth time. From the point of view of the whole country, is not so easy, and then this ownership is very tenuous.
Thank you. Tavi, the comment about motivations I find really great, and I understand that you can think about it not only at the level of the government, which is somehow connected with ownership and also, but when we look at, for example, those incentives are there in order to build motivation at the citizen level, because citizens have to be somehow incentivized also to use those services. Yes, we need to grab their attention. The question to Mrs. Daiva, I would like to start with asking you about one or two best projects or best services that you find really successful in Lithuania, but then if you could also comment on this motivation element on both sides, on the governmental side and on the citizen side. Why those projects are actually successful? What are the measures of success? And do you look into this motivational element on both sides when measuring the success of the particular project?
Yes, thank you for the question. And we're really proud about our project. And I see in the audience the persons that made this possible. And this is our State Information Resource Interoperability Platform. And we are proud about it. It's a system aimed at enabling persons to receive public and administrative services, e-services from institutions in accordance with one-stop shop principle. And it's the system established and operated by our Information Society Development Committee and the Ministry of Transport. And first of all, it's a single point access to public electronic services for the citizens and business. And meaning that all e-services provided by central government institutions and also all municipalities accessible via one portal. And this been a success story, and the one of the latest probably prouds that we could mention, it's creation of the complex e-service. And it was designed that allows citizens to get the childbirth-related services in one place. It's a service that was created according to the life event. And before, these 5 different services, which are application for parental leave, child registration, declaration for child's residence, parental leave allowance, request for lump sum after the birth of child, were provided in 5 different portals. Now, what you need to do is just to click 5 boxes and you request for all 5 services. The user who is skilled, you could request and make all the necessary steps in maybe 10 minutes. And that's it, what it takes. So we are quite proud about this kind of services. And we are thinking to continue with this initiative, and we have foreseen that we will be also developing the 8 more services according to the life event. So it will be, I start a business, so what do I need to do? And it will be on this platform. And if I bought a car, what I have to do? I lost a job and seek for employment. I travel abroad. I want to start my studies. I become disabled. I need a driving license, and I start a farming business. So this is for us, for Lithuania, the new step to the quality of public administrative services. So we not recently, but our Lithuanian service catalog counts over 9,000 public and administrative services. And we managed to make 10% of these services that are provided electronically. So 942 now available electronically. And of course, it's due to EU funds. We could develop this However, now we think that we put some priority services electronically, but as Tavi said, maybe not all of these services should be provided electronically. So at this stage, we really assessing and which kind of services will have to go electronically. And we need to consult with citizens, we need to consult with businesses, and to find out what really their needs. And I think these kind of discussions we have to expand, because we don't have enough, we don't speak enough. And so that would be the next step to improve the quality and to be more efficient in developing such a services, that they have to really be users and citizen-centered. What I have to say about the use of services. So in Lithuania, in 2014, we had 55% of e-service users that use at least once e-service from all internet users. From all population, it will be 40%. So our target is that in 2015, we will have 60% of internet users that use electronic services and 44% of population that would use electronic services. And I think we have to put more effort in informing the citizen about existence of these services, and especially to teach them how to use, because we have also aging population, and this is important that they also are not, how to say, separated from this process, that they're included in this digitalization process. On another hand, to improve this e-service use, we need also to start from the school and to improve the children's skills as well.
Thank you. Mr. Ainis, we were talking about efficiency, we were talking about cost per head, bigger country, smaller country. I just wanted to run such a, you may say, such a crazy idea. Would you consider, let's say, sharing the savings of the particular service with the citizen in order to incentivize to use the service? Let's say traditional way of the service is, let's say, €6 per head. Digital cost of the service is €2 per head. Saving is 4, 50-50. €2 comes to the state, €2 comes back to the citizen. Is it at all possible?
Well, this is what we actually do. Couple of examples. You can declare your place of residence online, free of charge. If you go to the state office and want to do it on site, please, €4, €5, this is what you have to pay for this. Such thing as certificates. All data is in databases and in registers, and in principle you don't need, as a person, think like a child birth certificate or property certificate. But if you want to have it, you still can have it and get a nice printout of the certificate and frame it and put it on the wall. But it will cost you. And this is what we are trying to do, working with all the agencies to make them differentiation between the cost of online service for the citizen and the on-site service. And in this way, this is not unique approach, because we have actually borrowed this from banks. Banks did exactly the same thing when they implemented the e-banking. And money is a very strong motivator. And now most of the things you can do on site with bank costs you money, and if you use internet banking, then you do not pay.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Mr. Minister, I'm talking to Mr. Jurand. I would like to dig deeper on the topic of cooperation. We have today a great opportunity to discuss in a distinguished gremium this topic of digitization. How often do you have the opportunity to really learn from other countries and share with other countries in European Union the benefits, the risks, the challenges of digitization of public administration and delivering new services to the citizens? And on top of that, how often do you have a chance also to think like 15, 20 years ahead in order to be able to target those people who are today young and they may be not using the government services right now, but someone should think about those people using government services in the future?
Well, if we consider the e-government services, so if you are talking about e-government services, then the learning from the other countries, I would say, is limited, because each and every country has its own peculiarities. Each and every country has to find its own way and its own system and digitize in its own way. If we talk about broader strategies, so how to introduce ICTs in the country, including this issue of digital skills, and how to make the people using the ICTs is a different story. We can learn a lot. As far as talking about those who are young today, and so that they use ICTs in 20 years' time, and having this long horizon for cultivating digital skills, well, for the young is the least problem, or the young are the least problem. They will learn by themselves, they will become digital natives, and they will be using the digital solutions in a natural way. The problem is, as my colleague has mentioned, with older generation. And we have to set the system, and not only digital system, but the services provided by the government in such a way that they are not excluded. Those who can and are able to use the government solutions digitally, yes, they should be allowed to. But it's if people don't want to use them, then the services of the government should be provided also in a physical way, the analog way, whatever it's called. So it's actually, I haven't answered you in the question in the first round, digital by default. Well, digital by default, yes, but mind the inclusion, mind the older people, mind those who don't want to use the tools. But the cooperation and learning from the other countries is one issue I would like to draw attention to, and I think we share it among all our countries, is that the very joining to the EU and being in the EU and adopting the ways how, well, the EU, or putting it differently, the other European member states deal with the things, it's something which we adapt and which we learn actually unwittingly. So we don't realize how much, not the European money added to development, economic development in our countries, but how much it added to the way our administration administrations and our countries work. Like the very method of having first strategy, then an action plan, then assigning the institutions, then assigning money, then crafting the projects, then the whole life of a project, then a control, then, well, claiming money back from Brussels. It's something, you know, we struggle to do, but it's exactly which forces us to follow the whole logic. And then control, and then the requirements to run those systems, projects, whatever, for another 5 or 7 years. This is something which we don't realize we have learned from Europe, from the other countries, but to my mind is the most important aspect.
Okay, thanks a lot. Tavi, my impression is, obviously not being an in-depth expert on all the projects and the nature of it within the 4 countries that are represented here, my impression is that, and this word was not yet spoken during this panel, I mean the word cloud, that in terms of the approach to cloud, Estonian government is somehow ahead of the rest of the pack, and maybe also ahead of other countries in the European Union. I would like to get your view on how this thinking about using cloud technology in the government emerged. What was at the beginning? What were the arguments used and agreed within people responsible for ICT in Estonian government that cloud is a viable option?
Okay. Who wants to hear more about this? Then there is 1 p.m. A special show about that. Half an hour, we talk about that. So, but it's not about the cloud. Once again, the whole things come down to the basic question: how to provide like normal, useful services to the people in a very efficient and low-cost way. And I mean, like, everything is in the cloud at the moment, so I don't know. Can we allow our government officers to use Dropbox? It's a cloud. I mean, like, yeah, why not? Can they use Office 365? Why not? Can they use Google Docs, Gmail? Yes, they are free tools. I mean, like, why should we pay? Why government should pay and waste taxpayers' money if there's like free tools? But they are cloud services. So I mean, like, it's not about the cloud. It's just providing right tools in a cost-effective way. And I still would like to come back to the digital by default or the creation services. I mean, like, as I said, we had a hype. We digitalized everything last decade, and now we have understood that it was needed step, but that's not the way to go. So the best service is no service. The best service for the citizen is to make it invisible, to basically hide it. So we, as government officers, we think that people would like to interact with the government. I have a secret, they don't. So if the government can manage, get the information, I mean, like, we all have these tax declarations with a couple of clicks or no clicks at all. I mean, like, information gathered from different systems. I mean, like, if everything like happens seamlessly, like without any like need of interaction, I mean, like, it would be great. And going back to the motivation question, the key element is not to motivate people. The key element is to motivate government officers. And for one example, what they can bring out is Estonian Tax and Custom. They are the best, how to say, organization in Estonia, compared with private and public institutions. They have basically fired half of their staff during the last 10 years. More than 100 people every year. And we don't have any other company who is so efficient, even in private sector, who is so efficient in Estonia, releasing 100 plus people every year. Why? Because they have a special agreement that every money they save, half goes back to the Minister of Finance, half will go to the salaries fund. And they have a clear incentive to be more efficient, more efficient, more efficient. So, and that's the way how it should be. I mean, to motivate government officers using money to provide the best services to the people. And yes, I can't say that everything is in this way in Estonia. Far no. I mean, but that's how the motivation should be. And also the question about learning from others. IT is an engineering thing. So it's not something magical. It's a pure engineering thing. I'm a computer scientist. I have learned this from the school. I have been programmer in my life, working in this field more than 17 years. I mean, it's a pure engineering thing. So it's either, you can copy everything from others. It's just a question. You have to play with your own people's culture, and you have to play with motivation. I mean, yes, there are not too many countries in the world who are using, for example, digital signature. But the people just don't know. For example, in Estonia, an average person saves 1 work week, 40 hours, even plus free time, because the whole society uses digital signature. And if you don't know that, you don't demand this from your government. So, but you can copy. You can copy everything. And yes, I agree that laws are different, culture different, but it's an engineering thing. You can copy.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are sort of approaching the end of the panel. Let me ask one last question, and I'm looking for the volunteer right now. I said I would like not to talk only about successes, challenges, but also maybe failures. Would you be willing to share some learnings from those projects which were not as successful as you would like them to be? 1 or 2 volunteers. Okay, we have. So really 1 minute response, okay?
Or maybe even shorter. The very big projects are very difficult to manage by public administration. And it's better to go for smaller IT projects with very clear assignment of tasks and responsibilities. And if you have even a medium size, you have to have very clear milestones when you see that this part of project has been achieved, it works, and then you can assign, or it doesn't, and then you can assign the success of a failure to an institution, and you can quickly adapt the management of the system. I think it's the major lesson from our last couple of years.
Estonian example, I think one-stop shop, or how you call this government portal. It's it looks great idea that you gather all the services in one place. But as I said, I mean, people don't want to interact with the government. They very rarely interact with the government. I mean, how many houses you are building during your life?
Hundreds.
Hundreds, 1, 2. So how many times you need to apply for a construction permit? Yeah. So what kind of customer user experience is that? How many times you apply for parental support money? 3 times during your lifetime? So again, what kind of customer experience is that? If you have ever felt, if you use some kind of e-banking and your bank changes the skin, they just change the skin, some colors and stuff, and you hate them doing this, 3 months, even maybe more, and you use those services every day and you still hate them, then how about the government? I mean, so gathering all these things in one place, it's a mess. I mean, if you go inside in Estonia, I mean, all the services are there. Yes, you could take personal, family, and there is more than 80 services you very rarely use. Doesn't work. So government portal was like the single stop shop, whatever is the name, I'm always forgetting. Huge fail. I mean, like, people want to have like zero service. I want to raise my hand. I want to say that I want to build a house. Who can help me? That's it. That's how the service should go, like. And somehow, voila, you want to build a house, very good. We issue the permit without your interference. That's the perfect service. No service at all. Seamless.
As seamless as possible. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Daiva Kirkelaite-Chetkuti, Mr. Arnis Daugulis, Mr. Jurand Drop, and Mr. Tavi Kotka, our guests and honorable speakers during today's panel discussion. Thank you very much. A round of applause for our guests, please.